After 100 and something thousand miles, I'm starting to notice some issues with the front brakes. The final issue that I have with the Nissan Titan after 100,000 miles is fuel mileage. The problem that I have is after 40,000 miles, we are down to 14.7 miles per gallon.
Some trucks are built to last forever. And then there are the ones on this list. Models that started falling apart long before hitting 100,000 miles. We're talking engines that died at 70,000, transmissions blowing up at 60,000, frames rusting through, and reliability nightmares most owners never saw coming. If you think all trucks are bulletproof, this countdown will change your mind. Let's get straight into it. Number 10. Ford F-150, 2004 to 2005 5.4-liter Triton. Ford sold millions of F-150s in the mid-2000s, but the 2004 to 2005 models with the 5.4-liter Triton V8 became one of the most frustrating ownership experiences many truck buyers ever faced. These trucks looked tough, pulled well, and drove smoothly when new, but underneath, they carried a mechanical time bomb that often exploded before hitting 100,000 miles. The main issue was the cam phaser design. These phasers were supposed to help the engine adjust timing for better power and efficiency. Instead, they became one of the most notorious weak points in modern truck history. Owners reported a loud knocking or rattling sound, sometimes described as marbles in a can, starting as early as 60,000 miles. Once that noise began, it typically meant the timing components were wearing out. The repair wasn't simple. Fixing the phasers often required tearing deep into the engine, and many times the damage had already spread to the timing chains and guides. What should have been a routine job frequently turned into a $3,000 to $5,000 repair. Then came the infamous spark plug disaster. The Triton V8 used a two-piece spark plug design that had a bad habit of snapping off inside the cylinder head when owners tried to remove them. Some broke cleanly. Others shattered into pieces, dropping fragments into the engine. A simple tune-up could suddenly turn into a nightmare, requiring special extraction tools or even head replacement. Many trucks didn't survive the stress of these repairs, leaving owners with big bills long before reaching 100,000. Timing chain tensioners were another weak spot. As they wore out, the engine would lose proper tension, leading to misfires, poor performance, rough idling, and eventually full timing failure. Once the chain slipped, the engine could be done for, often with fewer than 80,000 miles on the odometer. Even the oil pumps were prone to early failure, causing low oil pressure and accelerated wear. Some mechanics started calling these years of the F-150 job security because they came into shops so frequently. It's not that the F-150 was a bad truck overall. Ford's design around these years just mixed poor engineering choices with components that aged too quickly. Many owners tried to stay ahead of the issues with timing upgrades, cam phaser lockouts, or custom solutions, but that often only delayed the inevitable. For thousands of drivers, the 2004 to 2005 F-150 felt like a truck that aged in dog years, failing much earlier than it should have and costing far more to maintain than anyone expected. Number 9. Chevy Silverado 1500, 2007 to 2009 5.3-liter AFM. The Silverado is usually known for solid, long-lasting reliability, but the 2007 to 2009 models with the 5.3-liter V8 and active fuel management AFM system became one of the biggest disappointments in Chevy truck history. On paper, AFM sounded brilliant. Shut off 4 cylinders during light driving to save fuel. In reality, it turned this engine into an oil-burning, lifter-destroying, early failure machine that left countless owners stranded well before hitting 100,000 miles. The biggest issue was oil consumption. Trucks that were brand new and perfectly maintained started burning oil like they were decades old. Some owners reported losing a quart every 1,000 miles. Others saw their engines run dangerously low between changes. The AFM system pulled oil into the intake through a poorly designed valley cover, and once that buildup started, it only got worse. Spark plugs fouled early, misfires appeared out of nowhere, and fuel economy actually dropped, completely defeating the purpose of AFM. Then came the lifter collapse problem. The AFM lifters were supposed to deactivate and reactivate cylinders on demand. But in these trucks, they often failed long before 100,000. When a lifter collapsed, the engine started ticking loudly, running rough and losing power. Sometimes the truck could limp home. Sometimes it simply shut down. Replacing lifters is not a small repair. It usually required removing major engine components, and if debris spread through the oil passages, the entire engine could be compromised. Carbon buildup was another silent killer. Thanks to the AFM design, the cylinders that deactivated would cool down, allowing carbon to accumulate faster than normal. Over time, this caused poor compression, hesitation, and eventually serious internal wear. Many owners had to perform top-end rebuilds just to keep these trucks alive, and some engines didn't even reach 80,000 miles before major failure. The transmission didn't help either. The 4-speed automatic used in these years had torque converter problems that caused shuddering, slipping, and harsh shifting combine, that with a stressed engine, and many trucks simply couldn't survive heavy use. Chevy eventually updated the AFM system in later years, and many trucks after 2010 improved dramatically. But the 2007 to 2009 generation became infamous. Some owners deleted AFM to stop the failures, but that often only delayed more issues that were already baked into the engine's wear pattern. At a glance, these Silverados looked like dependable half-tons, but under the hood, AFM turned them into early-aging trucks that often failed years ahead of schedule, leaving many drivers shocked that a Chevy V8 couldn't even reach 100,000 without major surgery. Number 8. Ram 1500, 2011 to 2013, 5.7-liter Hemi. The 5.7-liter Hemi has a strong reputation today, but the early 2010s versions, especially in the 2011 to 2013 Ram 1500, delivered some of the most frustrating engine failures owners had ever experienced. These trucks looked tough, rode great, and had plenty of power, but under the hood, a silent mechanical problem was waiting to show up, usually between 60,000 and 90,000 miles. The biggest issue was the ticking. Many Ram owners began hearing a faint tick at startup, brushing it off as normal Hemi behavior. But for these specific years, that ticking often meant the beginning of cam and lifter failure, a widespread problem that took out thousands of engines. The roller bearings in the lifters would seize, flattening cam lobes and sending metal shavings throughout the engine. Once that happened, the engine not only lost power and smoothness, but also suffered internal scoring that could lead to complete failure. This wasn't the kind of issue you could ignore. As the cam wore down, the engine would misfire, run rough, and eventually start throwing codes. Fixing it wasn't cheap. A proper repair meant replacing the camshaft, all the lifters, and often the oil pump and timing components as a precaution. Many shops quoted $4,000 to $7,000 for the job, and some owners had to replace the entire engine. Another problem came from the multi-displacement system, MDS, Ram's version of cylinder deactivation. Like GM's AFM, it was designed to save fuel by shutting off cylinders during light engine load. But in these Hemi-trucks, MDS contributed to uneven lifter wear and caused additional stress on components already prone to failure. Trucks used mostly for city driving or stop-and-go traffic suffered the most. Then there were transmission issues. The 6-speed automatic used in these years had torque converter problems that caused shuddering and slipping. Some trucks began experiencing harsh shifts well before 80,000 miles. While not every failure resulted in a full rebuild, enough owners reported early issues for this generation to be flagged as problematic. Electrical problems also plagued this era of the Ram 1500. TIPM failures, essentially the truck's electrical control center, caused random stalling, fuel pump issues, and malfunctioning accessories. Replacing the TIPM could easily cost over $1,000, and diagnosing intermittent electrical faults was often a long, expensive process. These trucks had the ingredients to be great: strong frames, comfortable cabins, and a beloved V8. But in the 2011 to 2013 models, the combination of lifter collapse, cam wear, MDS complications, and transmission hiccups made them fall apart far earlier than expected. Owners who bought them thinking they'd last 200,000 miles were shocked to sometimes see major failures before even hitting 90,000. Number 7. Nissan Titan, 2004 to 2006. When Nissan entered the full-size truck market with the first-gen Titan, expectations were high. It had strong power, a bold design, and a reputation for being different from the usual American trucks. But the early years, especially 2004 to 2006, turned into some of the most troublesome trucks Nissan ever built. Many owners who expected a durable workhorse were surprised when serious failures appeared long before reaching 100,000 miles. The most infamous issue was the rear axle. These Titans had differentials that simply weren't built to handle real truck use. Under towing, hauling, or even moderate highway driving, the differential could overheat, grind itself apart, or leak fluid from the axle seals. Once that fluid level dropped, gears inside the differential would strip or seize, often destroying the entire rear end. Some owners had their axles fail at just 40,000 to 60,000 miles. An extremely early death for a full-size truck. Repair costs ranged from $1,500 to over $3,000, and in extreme cases, the truck was no longer safe to drive until the whole housing was replaced. Brakes were another major disappointment. The early Titans used undersized rotors that warped quickly, especially in warm climates. Owners reported severe vibration under braking, soft pedal feel, and rotors that needed replacement repeatedly. Sometimes every 10,000 to 15,000 miles, Nissan eventually redesigned the braking system. But for many of the early owners, the damage was already done. There were also widespread reports of drive shaft and U-joint issues. Some drivers noticed clunking or banging noises under acceleration. Others experienced vibrations that gradually worsened until the driveshaft needed replacement. Combined with rear axle failures, this made the Titan feel fragile in areas where a truck should be strongest. Electrical problems weren't uncommon either. The early Titans had faulty wiring harness connectors that caused dead gauges, malfunctioning 4x4 systems, and random warning lights. Window motors and door lock actuators also failed early. None of these issues alone were catastrophic, but together they created a pattern of unreliability that wore down owners long before 100,000 miles. Cooling system failures added another layer of complexity. Radiators and transmission coolers were known to develop leaks that allowed coolant to mix with transmission fluid, a disastrous combination that quickly destroyed the transmission. If not caught early, repairs could easily exceed $4,000. Interior quality also lagged behind American trucks of the same era. Seats tore, dashboards cracked, and trim pieces loosened far earlier than they should have. While cosmetic problems don't stop a truck from running, they contributed to the feeling that these early Titans aged too quickly. The frustrating thing is that the Titan had potential. Its 5.6-liter V8 was strong, the ride was comfortable, and the truck had plenty of personality. But Nissan's first attempt at a full-size truck brought too many engineering missteps, especially in the rear axle and braking system, to deliver long-term durability. Many owners discovered the truth the hard way. These early Titans simply weren't built to take the beating a full-size truck needs to survive. Number 6. Toyota Tundra, 2000 to 2003. Toyota is known for building some of the most reliable trucks on the road, but the early 2000 to 2003 Tundra models carried one flaw so serious that it overshadowed everything else: frame rust. This wasn't normal surface rust. This was deep structural corrosion that ate through critical sections of the frame long before these trucks even approached 100,000 miles. For many owners, the Tundra didn't simply age, it deteriorated at a shocking pace. The problem started with a batch of frames supplied by Dana Corporation, which used an inadequate rust-proofing process during manufacturing. As a result, moisture, salt, and winter road chemicals penetrated the metal far too easily. The frames on thousands of Tundras began rusting from the inside out, creating massive holes, weakened crossmembers, and in severe cases, frames that could literally snap under stress. Some trucks failed safety inspections with fewer than 70,000 miles on the clock. Owners reported harrowing stories: spare tires dropping off due to rusted mounts, fuel tank straps failing, brake lines corroding, and control arms weakening. In some cases, the steering rack mounts rusted clean through. The dangerous part was that many of these failures happened suddenly. One moment everything seemed fine, and the next, a structural component had given way. For a truck expected to tow, haul, and handle rough roads, this type of frame deterioration made it nearly unusable long before it reached 100,000 miles. Toyota eventually issued one of the largest frame-related recalls in truck history. Many Tundras were inspected and either patched, reinforced, or completely replaced with brand-new frames. But even with Toyota's efforts, not every truck was saved. Some were deemed too far gone and were bought back at market value. Others continued to rust, even after partial repairs, leaving owners frustrated and unable to trust their trucks long-term. Beyond the frame, the 2000 to 2003 Tundras also experienced early failures in components that were tied to the rust issue. Brake system components corroded, causing premature piston failure inside the calipers. Fuel lines rusted, leading to leaks that posed a fire risk. Suspension mounts weakened, creating loud clunks and unstable handling. Even bed mounts and exhaust hangers deteriorated prematurely. What made this especially disappointing is that the rest of the truck was actually quite solid. The 4.7-liter V8 was smooth and durable. The transmissions were dependable, and the overall driving experience was excellent for the time. But none of that mattered once the frame began breaking down. A powerful engine can't compensate for a chassis that's literally dissolving beneath it. Some owners who lived in dry, warm climates managed to avoid the worst of the corrosion. But for those in the Midwest, Northeast, and coastal regions, the story was very different. Trucks that should have lasted 250,000 miles were instead parked for good at 70,000, 80,000, or 90,000 miles. Not because the engines failed, but because the frames could no longer safely support the truck. The early 2000s, Tundra will forever be remembered as a tough truck, with one fatal flaw. It had the heart of a Toyota, but the skeleton of something much weaker. And for thousands of owners, that flaw made it fall apart long before it ever reached the mileage Toyota is famous for. Number 5. Ford Ranger, 2002 to 2006 3.0-liter Vulcan. The Ford Ranger has a reputation for being a tough little truck, but the 2002 to 2006 models with the 3.0-liter Vulcan V6 proved that even indestructible trucks can have weak years. These Rangers looked the part, compact, simple, and ready for work. But they carried a mix of mechanical and electrical problems that showed up far earlier than most owners expected. Many drivers bought these trucks thinking they'd easily last 200,000 miles. Instead, some struggled to make it past 80,000 without major headaches. One of the most common issues was the transmission. The automatic transmissions in these years were notoriously fragile. Harsh shifting, slipping between gears, delayed engagement, and torque converter shudder became routine complaints. Some owners reported full transmission failures at just 60,000 or 70,000 miles. Repairs often cost more than the truck's value, forcing many to either rebuild the transmission prematurely or give up on the truck entirely. Even the manual transmissions weren't perfect. Synchros wore out fast, making certain gears grind or refuse to engage. The 3.0-liter Vulcan engine itself was known for being simple and long-lasting, but not in these years. Timing chain wear began appearing much earlier than usual, causing rattling noises and poor performance. If the chain slipped, the truck would misfire, lose power, or even fail to start. Some owners found themselves needing a full timing service well before reaching 100,000 miles, a job that wasn't cheap and often required significant labor. Vacuum leaks and intake manifold gasket failures also plagued these models. Drivers experienced rough idling, stalling, sluggish acceleration, and inconsistent fuel economy. These weren't catastrophic failures, but they were frustrating recurring issues that made the truck feel unreliable and unpredictable during daily driving. Electrical problems were another weak spot. The Rangers from this era had clusters that randomly failed, leaving gauges unreadable. Power windows and locks malfunctioned, blower motors died early, especially in colder climates. In some cases, wiring harness problems caused random misfires, or made the truck run rough, leading owners to chase electrical gremlins for months without clear answers. Fuel pump failures were also surprisingly common. Trucks would suddenly lose power, hesitate under load, or shut off without warning. Many fuel pumps died around 70,000 to 90,000 miles, often requiring tank removal to replace them. Combined with early ignition coil failures and persistent sensor issues, these electrical and fuel problems made the truck far less reliable than Ford intended. Cooling system weaknesses added to the list. Radiators cracked, hoses deteriorated quickly, and water pumps failed early, especially on trucks used for towing or heavy work. Overheating became a recurring theme, and once a Vulcan V6 overheated, it could develop head gasket issues that spelled the end for the engine. Even the interior didn't hold up well. Seat padding collapsed early, dash plastics cracked, and door panels loosened over time. While cosmetic issues don't stop a truck from running, they contributed to the overall feeling that these Rangers aged faster than expected. Many owners loved their Rangers despite the problems. They were simple, easy to drive, and inexpensive to operate. But the combination of weak transmissions, early timing issues, fuel system problems, and electrical failures made the 2002 to 2006 models some of the shortest-lived in the Ranger lineup. For a truck known for reliability, these years were a disappointing chapter, with many units falling apart long before hitting six figures on the odometer. Number 4. GMC Sierra 1500, 2014 to 2016. The GMC Sierra is usually seen as the more refined sibling of the Silverado, but in the 2014 to 2016 model years, refinement didn't translate into durability. These trucks looked fantastic, came with upscale interiors, and delivered strong performance. But beneath the polished exterior, a series of mechanical issues caused many of them to fall apart far before reaching 100,000 miles. Owners who expected a dependable daily driver were blindsided by early failures, expensive repairs, and problems that showed up long before they should have. The most widespread complaint was the 6-speed transmission used during these years. Many Sierra owners began noticing shuddering, hard shifting, and slipping well before hitting 80,000 miles. The torque converter was one of the biggest culprits. When it began to fail, the truck developed a vibration that felt like driving over rumble strips. Some trucks experienced repeated converter failures even after replacements. If the debris from a failing converter circulated through the transmission fluid, it could damage clutches and valves, leading to a full rebuild or replacement. Costs ranged from $2,500 to over $4,000. And many trucks didn't make it to 100,000 miles without serious transmission work. The 5.3-liter engines of this era also struggled. Although smoother than older V8s, they inherited problems from GM's Active Fuel Management (AFM) system. Oil consumption became common, with some engines burning a quart every 1,500 miles. Once oil levels dropped, the engine would misfire, lose power, or foul spark plugs. AFM lifters were also prone to collapsing, which caused loud ticking, rough idling, or cylinders that refused to reactivate. While not every engine failed before 100,000, enough did that these years gained a reputation as some of the weakest in Sierra's recent history. The air conditioning system brought additional frustration. The condenser used in these trucks was notorious for leaking early, Sometimes before 50,000 miles, owners suddenly lost cold air in the middle of summer, only to discover a hairline crack in the condenser that required the entire unit to be replaced. A full repair could cost between $1,000 and $1,500, and many trucks had the condenser fail again because the original design was overly fragile. Electronics presented another layer of trouble. Touchscreen failures, dead backup cameras, and glitchy instrument clusters were reported in large numbers. Infotainment units froze. Bluetooth disconnected randomly, and radio modules died early. While electrical issues won't strand you on the road, they created constant annoyance and added repair bills that shouldn't have appeared so early in ownership. Suspension and steering problems also surfaced far too soon. Steering racks developed clunks and looseness, especially at lower speeds. Some owners felt vibrations through the wheel that made the truck feel unstable. Front suspension components, ball joints, tie rods, and bushings wore out quickly, giving the truck a sloppy feel and requiring early replacements. These issues were especially noticeable on trucks used for towing or rough roads. Interior wear was another unexpected disappointment. Seats lost support earlier than expected, stitching came loose, and dashboards developed rattles. While cosmetic problems might seem minor, they added to the overall impression that this generation aged faster than it should have, especially for a truck marketed as premium and rugged. In isolation, each of these problems might not seem devastating, but together, they created a pattern of early deterioration that left many Sierra owners feeling let down. A truck at this price point, and with this reputation, should easily last 200,000 miles with proper maintenance. Instead, many 2014 to 2016 Sierras began showing serious problems before even reaching the 100K mark. Number 3. Chevy Colorado, 2004 to 2006 3.5-liter E5. Chevy wanted the first-generation Colorado to be a modern, efficient replacement for the old S10. On paper, the idea made sense. A new platform, better fuel economy, and a unique 3.5-liter inline 5-cylinder engine that was supposed to balance power and efficiency. But in reality, these early Colorados became some of the shortest-lived mid-size trucks of the 2000s. Many owners reported serious failures long before their trucks even hit 100,000 miles, with issues so widespread that entire online communities revolved around diagnosing them. The most notorious problem was the timing chain system. Unlike the bulletproof timing chains found in many older Chevy engines, the chain tensioners in this 3.5-liter i5 were weak from the beginning. As the tensioner wore out, the chain became loose, creating a loud rattling noise at startup. Over time, that noise turned into a serious mechanical threat. The chain could jump teeth, causing misfires, poor performance, and in severe cases, complete engine failure. Some owners needed a full timing system replacement before 70,000 miles, a repair that could cost $1,500 to $2,500. Cylinder head failures were another major problem. These engines were notorious for developing cracks in the head, which led to coolant loss, overheating, and rough running. Many trucks suffered blown head gaskets because owners didn't catch the coolant leak early enough. If the truck overheated even once, the engine could become permanently damaged. Some owners ended up replacing the entire engine long before reaching the 100K mark. Electrical issues added another layer of frustration. The early Colorados were particularly prone to body control module (BCM) failures, causing a wide range of bizarre problems: power windows that stopped working, dead gauges, door locks that randomly cycled, and warning lights that flickered on and off for no clear reason. Diagnosing electrical problems in these trucks became a struggle, with many mechanics recommending BCM replacement simply because the issues were so unpredictable. The fuel system didn't hold up well either. Fuel pumps and injectors failed early, causing hard starts, stalling, or hesitation during acceleration. Some trucks lost power on the highway, while others refused to start at all. Replacing these components wasn't cheap, especially since some failures were caused by deeper engine issues that remained hidden until the truck was taken apart. Transmission problems were common as well. The 4-speed automatic used in this era frequently developed harsh shifting, delayed engagement, and early internal wear. Owners reported needing rebuilds as early as 60,000 miles. Even the manual transmissions had issues, with clutch components wearing quickly and synchros grinding long before they should have. The suspension wasn't immune either. These trucks suffered from weak ball joints, control arms, and sway bar links. Front-end clunks, loose steering feel, and premature wear were common. Some owners had to replace multiple suspension components before the truck even hit 80,000 miles. Interior quality also fell short. Seats wore out quickly, dashboard plastics cracked, and trim pieces loosened far earlier than expected. While cosmetic issues don't stop a truck from running, they reinforce the larger pattern. This generation aged much faster than it should have. The early Chevy Colorado could have been a great mid-sized truck, but its engine flaws, electrical gremlins, timing chain failures, and weak drivetrain components turned it into one of the most short-lived trucks Chevy ever released. Many owners loved the idea of the Colorado, but the reality was a truck that often fell apart before it reached its first big milestone. Number 2, Ram 2500, 2013 to 2015 6.7-liter Cummins. On paper, the Ram 2500, equipped with the 6.7-liter Cummins, should have been one of the most durable heavy-duty trucks ever built. The engine itself is legendary for lasting 300,000 to 500,000 miles with proper care. But the 2013 to 2015 models came with a new generation of emissions and electronic systems that caused major problems long before these trucks ever approached 100,000 miles. Owners who bought them expecting bulletproof performance were blindsided by failures that had nothing to do with the engine's strength, and everything to do with what was bolted onto it. The biggest troublemaker was the emissions system. These years had the most problematic diesel exhaust fluid, DEF, setup Ram ever used. The DEF heater, level sensors, and tank modules failed so frequently that thousands of owners were left with trucks that went into limp mode, refused to start, or displayed constant service DEF system warnings. Once the truck triggered a countdown to zero start message, it was essentially stranded until fixed. Replacing DEF components wasn't cheap. Repairs often ranged from $1,000 to $2,000, and many owners dealt with repeated failures before hitting 80,000 miles. Turbo actuator failures were another notorious issue. The Holsit turbo used in these Ram models was strong, but the electronically controlled actuator was a fragile piece of equipment. When it failed, The truck lost boost, ran sluggishly, and in many cases went into limp mode. Replacing the actuator alone could cost over $2,000, and in some cases, a full turbo replacement was recommended, pushing the bill closer to $4,000 or more. Some owners saw their first actuator failure at just 50,000 to 70,000 miles. Exhaust gas recirculation, EGR, coolers in these years also had a bad habit of clogging early soot buildup, caused poor fuel economy, reduced power, higher exhaust temperatures, and eventually full-on EGR failures. Many trucks needed EGR cleanings or replacements long before 100,000 miles. Combined with the DEF system, the emissions package became a nightmare for drivers who depended on their trucks for towing or long-distance hauling. Even the transmissions weren't spared. While the Cummins engine is incredibly strong, the 68 RFE automatic transmission attached to it was not. These transmissions developed early torque converter shudder, clutch wear, and overheating issues when pushed hard. Many owners reported needing rebuilds between 60,000 and 90,000 miles. Shockingly early for a heavy-duty diesel truck. Under moderate towing loads, some transmissions simply couldn't keep up. Electrical issues added to the frustration. Early TIPM, totally integrated power module, failures caused stalling, dead fuel pumps, intermittent starting issues, and random accessory malfunctions. Sensors throughout the truck, from boost pressure to crank position, failed earlier than they should have, making troubleshooting a constant battle. Fuel system problems also became common. CP3 and early CP4 pump variants had occasional early wear issues, and injector failures appeared earlier than expected. For a Cummins-powered truck, contaminated fuel, water intrusion, or small internal wear could lead to misfires or rough operation. In the worst cases, a failing injection pump could take out the entire fuel system, costing $5,000 to $8,000 to repair. What made this generation so frustrating is that the core engine, the actual 6.7-liter Cummins block, was still excellent. The failures didn't come from pistons or rods or crankshafts. Instead, the truck fell apart because the surrounding components, transmissions, turbos, emissions modules, and electronics, couldn't match the durability of the engine owners expected, the unstoppable longevity that Cummins is famous for. But instead, they ran into expensive early failures that left many trucks struggling to reach even 100,000 miles without major work. The 2013 to 2015 Ram 2500 could have been one of the greats. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of what happens when a legendary engine is paired with fragile supporting systems that simply weren't ready for real-world use. Number 1. Ford F-250/F-350, 2003 to 2007 6.0 Power Stroke. When people talk about trucks that fell apart long before 100,000 miles, nothing comes close to the infamous 6.0 Power Stroke. These 2003 to 2007 Ford F-250 and F-350 models have become legendary, but for all the wrong reasons. They had the power, the sound, the towing capability, and the presence. But beneath all that muscle was one of the most failure-prone diesel engines ever sold in a heavy-duty pickup. Thousands of owners expected a truck that would run forever. Instead, many barely made it past 60,000 or 70,000 miles without massive repairs. The biggest problems came from the EGR and oil cooling systems. The 6.0's EGR cooler was notoriously fragile. It would crack or clog with soot, sending exhaust gases and coolant where they didn't belong. At the same time, the oil cooler, buried deep in the engine valley, also clogged early due to poor coolant flow. When the oil cooler clogged, oil temperatures skyrocketed. High oil temps stressed the EGR cooler even more, creating a chain reaction of failures that often ended with head gaskets blowing out. And once those head gaskets let go, the repair wasn't simple. The 6.0's head bolts were too weak for the engine's boost levels, so once the gasket lifted, the engine needed upgraded head studs, new gaskets, a new oil cooler, a new EGR cooler, and hours of labor. In many repair shops, fixing these trucks meant removing the entire cab from the frame, an expensive, time-consuming job. Repair bills between $6,000 and $12,000 weren't unusual, and that was for trucks that hadn't even hit 100K. The injectors were another major problem. High-pressure oil control was a core part of the 6.0's fuel system, and when the oil sheared down or became aerated, the injectors could fail suddenly. Many owners experienced hard starts, rough idling, hesitation, or stalling due to injector wear. Replacing injectors was expensive, and on these trucks, one failure often meant others weren't far behind. Turbo issues added to the headache. The variable geometry turbo on the 6.0 was prone to sticking vanes caused by soot buildup. When the vanes stuck, the truck either lost power or surged unpredictably. Cleaning or replacing the turbo became a regular maintenance item for some owners, often needed before 80,000 miles. Then there were the FICM failures, the fuel injection control module. This module controlled the injectors, and when it began to fail, the truck suffered from no start conditions, reduced power, or constant stalling. Heat, vibration, and electrical stress caused these modules to weaken early. Replacing or repairing a FICM wasn't cheap, and for trucks used for heavy work, failures were almost inevitable. Cooling system failures were also common. Degas bottles cracked, radiators separated at the seams, and water pumps wore out prematurely. Many owners found themselves replacing cooling components multiple times before reaching 100,000 miles. Even the transmission wasn't safe. The 5R110 torque shift was strong when maintained, but it wasn't immune to overheating caused by engine-side failures. When the engine was struggling, the transmission often suffered too. Some drivers experienced slipping, harsh shifts, or full failure under load. Despite all this, some 6.0 Power Stroke owners found ways to bulletproof their engines, replacing weak components with upgraded parts. But doing this wasn't cheap. Anyone who didn't spend the money early often paid even more later. For many, the 6.0 became a truck that constantly demanded attention, repairs, and money just to stay alive. The 2003 to 2007 F250 and F350 with the 6.0 Power Stroke are now famous for being both loved and hated. They looked like trucks that could conquer anything, but behind the scenes, their engines were falling apart from the inside out. And for countless owners, they were the definition of a truck that didn't even come close to surviving 100,000 miles without major failure. Some trucks earn their reputation over decades of hard work, and others earn theirs the hard way, by leaving owners stranded long before the odometer even touches 100,000 miles. The models on this list weren't bad ideas. Many had strong engines, great designs, or features people genuinely loved. But one weak system, one bad engineering decision, or one overlooked flaw was all it took to turn them into early failures. If there's one lesson here, it's this: always check the specific model years before you buy. A truck that's legendary in one generation can be a money pit in another. And when a truck fails early, it's rarely small issues. It's major components like engines, transmissions, frames, and electronics that bring everything down. If you've owned any of these trucks or survived one of their breakdowns, drop your story in the comments. Your experience might save someone else from making the same mistake. And if you want more deep dives into the best and worst trucks ever built, make sure to stick around. There's always another model year with another hidden surprise.